Welcome back to Restauranttopia. We got a cool episode with Anthony Hamilton, Dave Ross. Anthony is bringing in the fire for 2022, talking about inflation. This is something everyone is dealing with. You are in the midst of, I wouldn't say hyperinflation, but definitely some strong inflation that we have not seen in decades. So Anthony's going to talk about how you handle it for your operation. You're a restaurateur. You're dealing with this, whether it's fryer oil, whether it's chicken breast, anything that you're buying right now is more expensive, and your customers are seeing that in their daily life, which could cause them not to have as much money to spend in your restaurants.
Imagine a perfect world where you can build a restaurant, open the doors, and make loads of money. Unfortunately, those days are over. It takes great leadership, hard work, and long hours to operate a successful restaurant. Together, we can make it happen. This is Restauranttopia.
Anthony, take it away. What do we got?
Thanks for that intro, man. I'm not sure I can handle the pressure, but I'm going to try my damnedest, right? So this is a really relevant topic. Obviously, every single one of us is dealing with inflation in every aspect of our life. So the question is, what exactly is inflation?
Yeah, come on, Professor. Tell us.
Yeah, let's tell us.
Econ 101, what is inflation? Again, this has not come up in our lives in the last decade. When you're looking at inflation of 1%, 2%, 3%, it doesn't move the needle. But when you're looking at double-digit inflation or triple-digit inflation with some of the products that you're buying in your restaurant, it is intense. And this is really causing your dollar to not go as far.
Yeah, so a couple things. The Fed loves to keep the inflation at about 2%. About 2% is where the Fed kind of juggles and they intervene and manipulate the system. They like that steady growth of inflation. So this time last year, we were at 1.2% year over year inflation. So that was actually really, really low. This year, 6.8 as of November, 6.8% inflation. And that's over the consumer index. So that's like the basket of goods, right? Like the normal stuff that people buy. We didn't even talk about specific products, which you're talking about. I just read a stat the other day and they were talking about beef, eggs, and I think chicken. Don't quote me on this, but it was somewhere around 13 to 15% inflation on those three items. We didn't even get into pork belly or oil or anything of that nature. So just because the national inflation is 6.8, the restaurant inflation is going to be a lot higher than that due to the specificity of certain products and certain commodities. And it's a real problem, right? So essentially, let's start with what inflation is, fellas. And I don't know that I really had a firm grasp on exactly what inflation was. I knew it was a thing, but I did some research into it. And by research, I mean Google searching. And I really came up with this definition. I love it. And it's simply demand outpacing supply, causing prices to inflate while the value of the dollar subsequently decreases, right? So this is like getting a Super Bowl ticket at the last minute. You're going to pay 5 times over value because the demand is very high. The supply is very low. People start breaking their wallets out and they kind of set the market, so to speak, on what the prices are and the precedents are. Now, all of a sudden, people expect to pay that much for a ticket at that point in the game. You have some sort of mini inflation there. So essentially, the value of the dollar goes down, right?
Well, and what you're looking at too, the amount of money that has been pumped into the economy through the certain government programs has caused a very high amount of new cash in the economy. I believe the statistic is 30% of all dollars in the economy right now were created by the Fed in the last 18 months.
So let's double down on that.
Crazy.
And let's take all that pent up money, right, that people haven't spent, all the governmental support, and then let's pair that up with a broken supply chain.
There you go.
Watch what happens, right? And watch what happens. Because
sounds
now
like
all of a sudden,
recipe for inflation.
It sounds exactly, because now products are in short supply, right? So if you want something for Christmas, your kid had to have that Tickle Me Elmo, you're going to pay $300 for it because you got the money and you want to make your kid happy. And that's 10 times what it should cost. But supply and demand tells you that's what you're going to pay.
And this isn't just something that, we're seeing. If you're a restaurateur out there doubting that this is going on, which you're probably not at this point going into 2022.
Can't.
I would tell you middle of 2021, there was a lot of doubters, just thinking that, well, these prices are crazy and this isn't real. And, but now I think people are realizing that it is real because they're seeing it in their home. They're seeing it in their utility bills. They're seeing it in their grocery shopping.
How about gas in your car?
Gas. They're seeing it in everything. So this is a real thing that you have to combat as a business owner, in order to remain profitable and employ people.
So the good news about this is most major economists, or well-versed economists, I should say, which is certainly not me, they expect this to be a temporary balloon. They do not expect this to be permanent inflation. So we'll see how that goes. Now, The big thing that we're all waiting for is what happens when things kind of come back down to earth. Like, let's say, they start producing more crude oil, which everybody's agreed to do. So there's going to be more crude oil in the market. The supply chain eventually is going to work itself out. It's already made some strides. It's going to get there. We're resilient folk. We figure out a way. So now you have lower costs of commodities. You have more supply coming in. Is everybody going to lower their prices? That's the question we have.
Anthony, I would disagree with your rosy picture of the future. I would say we're in this for the next 12 to 18 months.
Oh, yeah.
And
No,
also,
that's right on my timeline. Yeah, absolutely.
I believe, this is just my personal opinion, I don't think they're going to give back as much as it was in, say, 2019, 2018.
No, and you see this in the beef market, if I'm not mistaken. Dave, you might have some thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think there's some opportunity for people to make money that will never see again in their life, and they're going to take those opportunities. And it's unfortunate that it's going to affect people, but at the end of the day, it's got to pass. It's got to pass through. You know what I mean? So, are we going to hear about in 10 or 15 years that there was a collusion, with the chicken manufacturers again, or beef packers, or whatever? Like, I think it's potential. We're going to look, but by then, it's like it's 1 billion scrolls on social media gone. It won't even be a blip on the radar. They'll pay their fine. They'll pay their fines, and they'll have made their billions of dollars, and they'll pay their millions in fines, and everybody will be happy.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part about it, is they kind of have a license where they can pay to be unethical, right? They know what's coming, they know what the consequences are, and they can do what they need to do. And you're going to see this across a lot of industries, not just in food service as well.
I think that there is a natural economic cycle that you're going to see with supply and demand, that people are going to take opportunity to make revenue. But I also believe that you're not going to see the give back and the prices come way down.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of people are naively hopeful for, is that, things will go back to where they were, but it's never the case, right? There's that certain threshold. To your point, Brian, it's beef's here, used to be here, now they're going to keep it here because that's so much more reasonable in perspective to where it was, right? And so you have that notion, and then obviously inflation becomes permanent.
Well, and if anybody's got any frustration listening to this, think about yourself in your restaurant. You have a menu price of $10 for a burger. Inflation happens, you go up to 12, okay? We see some relief in inflation. Are you going back down to a 10 or 11?
Yeah, great question.
On your menu? Okay, so you answer that for yourself, and then decide what other people are probably answering for their businesses as well. So
what you're going to do is what your customers tell you need to do. That's at least my thought. They're going to influence this decision, whether you lower the price back down or whether you keep it high and you capture that margin.
You have to review your food costing. You have to review your prime cost. You have to make the adjustments. And we've talked ad nauseum about making menu increases in 2021. But now that we're in 2022, you have to make the menu increases. You have to pass this along to the consumer, because it is for your survival. As an operator, you need to make sure that you're making money. It is, and Dave, I love this quote, it is irresponsible not to make a profit.
Yeah.
And you got to tell me who said that.
Paul Sagan.
I loved it.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't have the courage to make a profit, then you can't support your staff and their livelihood, right? It is profound, man. To hear it from the horse's mouth was quite the blessing. So, Brian, to your point about menu increases. So the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics came out and said limited service restaurants, 7.1% increase in prices over the course of last year. Full service restaurants, 5.9%. That's the national averages across all media. So understand that some restaurants stood pat. They didn't do much. They didn't raise their prices at all. So there's others out there that must raise 12 to 14%, right? It's pretty staggering. You think about it, just how much that is. So if you haven't raised your prices yet, I would look at this, and I would ask why. Because you're putting yourself between a rock and a hard place.
We talk about this all the time. Look at the world through the lens of the consumer. Go to other restaurants, see what they're charging. Go to the drive-through at the national chains and see what an actual meal costs when your kid orders it. You're no longer at the $4 or $5 range. Whether it's XYZ sub place or some gross or whatever it is that you're going to, you're still not getting out of there for under $10, $12 per person. You got to be able to pass that along to your place, and whether it's fast casual, fine dining, what have you, you got to make the most of that customer experience and really make sure that you live up to the standards of your operation and continue that on under an appropriate price point.
I agree wholeheartedly, man. And listen, if you need help with the pricing, like reach out, we'll help. I'll do pricing survey for you and study your competition and who you benchmark against and show you where you're at in the market, because that market elasticity is a real thing. You should worry more about market-based pricing more than cost-based pricing at this point in time. But to make matters complicated, not only are you dealing with the inflation of the price of goods and everything else that's coming in, but then you got the inflation of staff wages too. So it's like they're getting crushed, right? Like you're hitting twice.
Yeah, well,
So
it's your prime cost.
yeah,
You have to be looking at that and paying attention. Now, I believe if we have a downturn in 2022, I know it's only Q1, but I believe that you're going to see a little bit of relief on the staffing inflation, but you still have to price it into the model.
there's a lot of staff. I read a report the other day that finally figured out where the labor went, right? I think we asked that question and they said an overwhelming majority of people went into business for themselves. And so I would expect a lot of people back into industries, right? Because all businesses don't succeed on their own, right? Especially solo entrepreneurs and sole proprietors. So anyway,
Yeah, I would say that's not true. I don't believe that that's where the staff went. And when you talk to Anthony, one thing that we were talking about offline that I just thought was so cool was the shadow inflation.
yeah,
What was
first
it
time I've
called?
heard it actually, and that's what spawned this episode because I went down a rabbit hole. I was reading some reports for something, and I'm like, what the hell is shadow inflation? Like I've heard of inflation, obviously, I had a good handle on it. Then I heard about shadow inflation. I think that's where this episode really comes into shape because the stuff we talked about before, most likely everybody out there knows, they're feeling it every day. But this notion of shadow inflation is something I think everybody needs to be wary of. And we've all fallen prey to it in some capacity just due to staff shortages. But essentially what shadow inflation is, now this is immeasurable, so it's kind of an ideal, right? But what it comes down to is you're decreasing the value of your brand standard because in spite of raising prices. So if you're that restaurant that doesn't want to raise the price because you're lacking the courage to do so, but you look at some of your staple items and say, well, I can get cheaper fryer oil in and I can staff one less host on this night and I can get, select beef instead of choice beef and I can go with these fries instead of the great fries and they're all still pretty good. And what that does is it depreciates the value of your brand at the same price that you're at. And that's something I really want to warn against is I don't know how you guys feel about this concept. I absolutely, my eyes were wide open. I started reading this feverishly.
What can you do as an operator to prevent that from happening?
Well, and that's it, Brian. I think it's, again, we get in that place where we hate to raise prices. And you know how I feel about raising prices. I think it should be done responsibly. I think it should be done sustainably. And I think it should be done incrementally over time. I think it's something you absolutely have to do. Going back to what we just talked about, 2% every year inflation, you should be raising your prices at least 2% every year across the board without question, because that is the inflation rate in a typical market. This, on the other hand, is a little crazy. And it's a little bit of an outlier that we're at 6.8% or whatever it is for November. So you have to be a little more ambitious with that. A lot of operators are going to be tempted to cut down portions, and they're going to be tempted to do this and tempted to do that.
I want to pump the brakes though. Just one point. I love what you're saying, but also the basket of goods that you're measuring inflation on is not that of the general consumer. Your basket of goods is what you buy for your restaurant. Everything is local. Everything is to you. So what does that look like?
Yeah.
And if something goes up by $2 or $3 and it results in a price increase of 33%, then you have to pass that along to the consumer. So
you got to do something.
Well, and I think having a strategy against it, I think if I had to put one word against this, it'd be value. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So when you look at, if you're going to sit down as a customer of your restaurant and enjoy a meal, and in that meal you decide, I'm going to take this chicken breast and downgrade it to this to save the money in order to keep my menu price the same, but have my cost of goods match and be in line so I don't take the increase. Can I effectively still provide the same value to that customer or to myself as I sit there and enjoy that meal, that it's not reflective in this is a cheaper dish? I'm paying the same amount of money for something cheaper. And if I feel good I can execute that, then I would say that that's probably a good decision.
Perfect.
But just to make a blanket statement of like, I'm going to go out and look for all these cheaper ingredients and all these cheaper things and all these cheaper options and take things out and not have the right service and not have the right ingredients and not have the right stuff, so I don't have to increase my menu. That's, I think, the shadow inflation that you're talking about, Anthony, is you're making all these decisions blanketly, not looking at what is the perception of your customer. You know, so I think, again, like we said in a lot of episodes, like spin yourself around, sit in the seat. How do you feel about that experience?
I think we've kind of talked about this in the past, not necessarily in the inflationary realm, but it's the death spiral.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
you cut staff, the bathroom's dirty. You cut staff, service sucks. You
Mhm.
cut staff, the host is not good. At the end of the day, when you do that on the food side, on the staff side, it's the death spiral, and then all of a sudden your top line is worse and you have no one in the building.
Yeah, and I think the downside to that, Brian, because it's a fantastic point. The downside to that is I don't know that operators are making that conscious choice to reduce labor. I think they're just having tough times grabbing labor to fill all spots, right? But I've been quoted recently as saying, "Listen, if you can't fill your need for labor, reduce your need for labor." Right, like, and that's the one thing I see people not doing is they just keep walking in the same wall every day. And listen, again, I know I'm not in their seat, and I don't want to sound tone deaf here, but I talk to operators all the time, and they insist on having an 8-page menu, and it's like, okay, look, but you need 7 line cooks with that. If you just go down to a 2-page menu, you only need 3 line cooks. So now filling your labor pool is much easier because you only have 3 spots to fill, not 7. So again, that's reducing your need for labor. And it begs the question too: can you automate anything else? Is there technology or things that you have being done in your organization that require staff to do? Going back to Rev's episode, maybe you have someone updating all your platforms, like single platform and Google My Business and Yelp and all that jazz. Why not hire a company like Marquee at $100 a month to do it for you, right? And then save that person an hour a week and use them for something else. And there's a lot of stuff out there. That's just 2 examples. There's a lot of things you can do to reduce your need for labor. And I think that's imperative to upholding your brand standard, because you're going to be short-staffed. You know it.
Yeah, and then on labor end, like how are you dispersing those labor dollars? You know what I mean? So like if you're at 8 and then you're down to 3, like are those 3 making more than they were when there was 8, so that they're a solid team? And you got 3 rock stars that are making good livable incomes instead of 8 people that are, you know what I mean? Like, 'cause you can find out when the rubber meets the road, like what people are made of and who's on the team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, who's got the jersey on, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Brian, what were you going to say, brother?
I agree.
Brian, were you going to say something?
No, I think you're spot on. It's not a matter of cutting costs. It's a matter of designing path forward that is strategic and you're doing the right things, where it's not just like, all right, we got to go from 5 people to 4. What are those 4 people going to be doing it, and how do you execute on that? So,
yeah. And it's funny.
I think that's a factor that brought up.
Yeah. I wish I would have had this mindset years ago, because I was working in a restaurant that did not do so well. And about 8 months in, it became apparent that we weren't doing so well. I was the executive chef and general manager. And every day I would go in there at 8:00 and I would open up the server station, get everything ready to go for all the servers coming in. And then I would go open the grill station. And then I would manage the restaurant from the grill station during lunch. I had 2 or 3 line cooks flanked on either side. I never once thought to change my menu to where I didn't need that many cooks. And I'm embarrassed looking back on it because the answer was so damn obvious. What I did is I just showed up and I hoped that the tide was going to change. I hoped that we would get busier. I hoped.
That's one thing I want to leave us on today. And don't hope that inflation is going to go down. Don't hope that the labor crisis is going to lessen. Don't hope that the COVID restrictions and the issues with COVID are going to go away. These are the realities of the day. They are going to be around for quite some time, and you have to move forward and plan and strategize accordingly.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly, man. Thanks for giving me the time on this. It's something that's really, really special to me because I see it constantly. So for those of you listening out there, understand shadow inflation, and please try to avoid it at all costs. Think of other ways to go around your problem.
Yeah, for sure. This was a great topic, Anthony. Appreciate you bringing it to us today. And Brian, good to see you, buddy. Happy New Year. 2022, we're in it. Buddy. Anthony, Happy New Year.
Hey, likewise, brother. Thank you.
And everybody, thanks for listening.
Awesome.
This is a high quality pod. Thank you, everybody.
Take care. Adios.
Thank you for listening to Restaurantopia. The gratitude that we have for each and every one of you spending your precious time to listen to this podcast is immeasurable. Please make sure to tell a friend about this podcast. And also, if you have any feedback for us, visit us on restaurantopia.com and drop us a line. You can also subscribe on your favorite place to listen to podcasts. Thank you and have a great day.
We also want to thank our sponsor, Hillcrest Food Service. If you are a local independent restaurant and are looking for a distributor who has chef and operational consulting, provides marketing support, does menu reviews, and most importantly, wants you to be successful, reach out to Hillcrest Food Service at hillcrestfoods.com. We are excited to announce the Restaurantopia VIP Text Club. Join by texting the word podcast to 844-928-4257. You will get access to exclusive content, industry news, deals, announcements, pro tips, and more. The VIP Text Club is an exclusive community of independent restaurant owners and professionals. Join today. Message and data rates may apply. Please check our website for our terms of service and privacy policy.